passage to the billionaire class. You can't have it all.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to The Evolution of Now, a podcast that has been in remission for about a month, but we're back. Things are going to be changing just to get some of the spring cleaning out of the way. You know, I did a video recently, or an audio about the show going forward, and I said we were going to go to bi-weekly, but we're changing that to every month. Once a month, we're going to be doing a show from now on. But that's a good thing because we're going to actually focus more on the topics that we choose to cover. And so hopefully we'll be able to get you a better show and better information in doing so. But my name is Christopher Robinson, and I am joined this week by the full crew for once. It's been so long. We got Jordan here. How you doing, Jordan?
Hey, I feel refreshed. I've been sleeping that whole time.
Sad.
Since the last recording. I've been sleeping, so
he hasn't
I'm ready.
been winning. Been very low energy. Thank you very much. But we also have Michael Beswick with us this week.
Hi.
Hey.
Don't mind me. I'm just drunk.
Yeah, he's had about 8 vodka, or what is it? Vodkas or rums so far?
Vodka and Coke.
Oh, okay. Vodka and Coke, that's not bad. But
he's our wild card for tonight.
Yeah. You have no idea what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
Or say exactly.
And we're also joined by Aubrey. How are you doing?
Hello. I'm all right.
How's your month been?
Exhausting, despite the fact that I did practically nothing. one of those months where I just feel sick, you know.
Is it because of politics or because of the weather?
Because of the weather, I think mostly, but politics don't help.
Yeah.
And Michael inspired me, so I have my own hot chocolate and rum.
Ooh, I never had that. So.
Yeah, it's a good combination.
Sounds weird to me. I don't know.
Sweet.
Well, it could be interesting. But I took this month actually to get onto Twitter finally. I actually started up on Twitter. I have a few followers. I'm doing pretty good. About 50 followers. Oh, man. And, yeah. Lighting the world on fire on Twitter, man. That's all I'm doing. But,
It takes a little while to find your footing on Twitter when you first start out. So you first start, like, you know, posting about, like, your food, and then you post about your day.
I'm never doing that. No, I only...
slowly get, like, good.
Yeah. I've just mostly been sticking with only, like, actual, like, news and politics and stuff and reacting to that stuff. But, that's neither here nor there. But
I mostly just pop onto Twitter to scream into the void.
Yeah. I've had some arguments with a few people on there. It's been great. A lot of right-wing arguments on there. But, yeah. But our topic this week is actually whether the Democrats, should they take the presidency in 2020 and also take back the Congress, the Senate, and the House, whether they should pack the Supreme Court. And I figured this would be a really decent discussion that we could have. And I totally forgot to start the timer, by the way.
Out of the way first.
What?
Oh yeah, get the timer running. One thing first. One of those two things is more likely than the other. It is more likely that Democrats will take back the presidency in 2020 than they will take back the Senate and the House.
Yeah.
However, let's
just saying.
Yeah, totally. Let's go over what. Reality. Let's explain what packing the courts actually mean, because I think there's many people who don't, who may have not, come across this concept before.
Yeah.
Chris, take it away.
But yeah, this is actually what packing the court means is if you guys know about the Supreme Court, there's 9 people that are seated on the Supreme Court currently. What packing the court would do is it would raise the amount of Supreme Court justices on the Supreme Court to either maybe 11 or 15, something like that. Those are two numbers I've seen being thrown around for how much they could potentially raise it by. I wanted to also start out here by saying that this isn't unprecedented for the Supreme Court's number of justices to actually fluctuate. Honestly, I know at the outset of the nation in 1787, I believe it was around there when they set up the Supreme Court. There were actually only 6 justices altogether at that point. Let me pull up this one story. Where is it at? In 1801, after that point, before the inauguration of Thomas Jefferson, the outgoing Federalist Party passed the Judiciary Act of 1801, shrinking the court from 6, because it was started out as 6. They shrank it down to 5 members by providing that the next member to die or resign would not be replaced. This is described by a man named, I don't have his name in front of me here, J.R. Saylor, a political scientist, as undoubtedly an attempt made by the Federalists to keep the Supreme Court wholly Federalist at that point. In 1802, Jefferson's Democratic Republican Party repealed the 1801 law and returned the court to 6 members. In 1807, the Jeffersonian-dominated Congress expanded the court to even members. It doesn't really say how many. It just says even members. I don't know why. This is coming from a Vox piece on this. It says to accommodate a new judicial circuit covering Kentucky, Tennessee, and Ohio, then new additions to the Union. In 1837, the two new circuits were created and the court's size increased to 9. Saylor credits this to the geographic pressures of America's westward expansion, but notes that Andrew Jackson quickly took advantage and appointed 2 new justices the day before he left office. So this is to show you that the court has been changing over time. And actually, in 1863, Congress increased the Supreme Court's size to 10 members in the midst of the Civil War. Saylor explains that, quote, there was a widespread suspicion that Lincoln wanted another man on the court on whom he could depend, lest the body invalidate some of the crucial and doubtful wartime legislation which was coming before it at that time. In 1866, as pro-Reconstruction Republicans in Congress did battle with President Andrew Johnson, Congress passed a law barring Johnson from filling vacancies until the court shrank to 8 members, which occurred the following year. And in 1869, with pro-Reconstruction President Ulysses S. Grant in office, Congress increased the court's size to 9, where it has stayed ever since. So the court has definitely fluctuated in size over time. And if you guys have seen much about Mr. FDR, he actually also tried to pack the court, as they say, during the New Deal era. He was unsuccessful at the time. However, the pressure that put onto the court itself actually did get some of the progressive legislation of the New Deal passed, because some of the justices then realized that, all right, we need to be a little bit less crappy about this and actually be a little bit more nonpartisan, lest they lose their jobs.
Yeah, that's initially why he wanted to pack the court in the first place, because he was frustrated, and so he proposed this ham-fisted attempt. He had this ham-fisted proposal to just simply pack the thing, because they just would not. They would get in the way of everything that him and his Congress would pass, because they had Democrats had a majority at the time. Except apparently, a lot of Democrats spoke up and advised that FDR advised him not to pack the court, and And I
Well,
guess,
it was very unpopular with the American people.
Yeah, and it actually did a lot of damage to him.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was a lot of political damage done to him because of his attempt to do so. But
degrading one of your institutions like that will have knock-on effects for until someone fixes it, basically, which could be decades.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in some of those instances that I mentioned earlier, some of that was the rollback, where like during Johnson's term, they limited him to not being able to appoint anyone to the court until it dropped down to 8 members, and that was part of that, I believe, was the rebalancing of it, and trying to bring the court back down in size, which will happen eventually if the Democrats do pack the court coming up in the next few years. But yeah,
it's very interesting how the way it's currently set up. Justices, they have these lifetime appointment. They have a lifetime appointment, and a president's access to adding justices is predicated on whether or not they decide to retire or they just die. So it's this imbalance where, like, hey, President Jimmy Carter never got to nominate a Supreme Court justice because no one decided to do it within his first term. President Eisenhower nominated 5, and Bill Clinton appointed 2 in his first 2 terms, while George H.W. Bush appointed the same number in only 1 term. So, and you see Trump the same thing, whereas like in his first term, the first 2 years, and he gets 2. He's allowed to appoint 2 Supreme Court judges.
Yeah,
or have 2 Supreme Court nominations. It's like, there's this imbalance that doesn't really reflect our democratic, sensibility as a nation.
Yeah. Yeah, and going back to the push right now to possibly pack the court, though, a lot of the fervor for this is coming out of the wake of a man named David Ferris. He's a political scientist. He wrote a book. It's a new book titled "It's Time to Fight Dirty: How Democrats Can Build a Lasting Majority in American Politics," and he lays out some really aggressive ways that the Democrats can fight back against this the conservative takeover of our government. Part of that is in the book to split up the state of California into a few different states, and so giving the Democrats a serious majority potentially if you split up California and all of those different states get 2 Senate seats, then you're going to be packing the Senate with Democrats as well, and so.
Well, mind you, there's red. The northern part of California is very red. It's very Republican.
Yeah.
And they've actually been pushing for independence because they feel that their voice isn't being heard by the majority of Californians.
Yeah.
But you know what? It's, any minority, like, people a part of the minority party in any state could say the same thing. It's like what gives them any more clout than anyone else. But I'm really curious though, and just real quick, like around just real quick, and like yes or no, do y'all support court packing? I personally.
Well, we were going to get to that, Jordan. Come on.
Oh shit! Sorry. I'm like so curious to know where everyone stands.
Jordan's just jumping the gun.
I am.
No, it's cool.
Yeah. But go on, sorry.
No, it's cool. If you want to get there, then let's do it. Jordan, actually, how about we start with you? What do you think that we should do? Should what should the Democrats do? Let's say.
Oh boy. Well, actually, I read this really, really good article. It was a Washington Post article. It's by I guess David Ferris, and he
Same
actually,
guy that wrote that book that I'm talking about. Yeah.
Oh yeah. And he actually he proposes that Democrats, once they gain a majority in the presidency by 2021, that they first kind of, I guess they kind of break something off for the Republicans and say, hey, how about actually, excuse me, I'm actually referring to a different article. But
Sad, not winning.
But David Ferris, he did say something really important too, which he said, okay, before we jump to packing the court, let's propose capping off a Supreme Court's a judge's service to 18 years, and eliminate lifetime.
I was going to say something like
tenure.
that as well.
Yeah, exactly. Because I do believe there are steps that we can take before packing the court, which I think would be our maybe not final, but in my mind,
my sense is, and Badger probably knows this better than I do, but the Supreme Court's life appointments were probably made at a time when life expectancy was a bit less, and so you've got someone like Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who's now 90 odd.
I think it's 80, 85.
80 something.
Yeah, she's much older than the average.
Yeah. So of course Kavanaugh, he's got 34 years left in him. Who said that he's basically a grudge against the Democrats. He's basically going to screw up anything the Democrats try to do. He's going to be on the court now 30, 40 years. And be able to do that, which is absurd. I think, whereas, back in the day, he'd only have 20 years left in him. Now, of course, he's got much longer because life expectancy is a lot longer. I think introducing a term limit is a really good idea. And it gives us some control over how many Supreme Court justices our president will get. So recently, you're probably going to get to this at some point, but in recent years, I believe is it 5 of the most recent Supreme Court justices have been nominated by Republicans?
Well, I do know, I've seen that 14 out of the last 18 Supreme Court justices were appointed by Republicans.
Yeah, there we go. Something like that.
Yeah.
But a majority of the most recent Supreme Court justices have been nominated by Republicans, just by chance, they happen to get in under Republican presidents. But that's problematic to me. It gives one party control over one of the most foundational institutions of the country, and means that even when the Democrats are in office, the Democrats have all 3 houses of government, but still have to fight through a group that's essentially unelected, or might have been elected 10 years ago.
And in that too, the Republicans only ever have to win the presidency once every decade or 2 decades or something like that to keep control of the court potentially, And so
I think
it's a really
term
bad
limit
idea
is
the way it is.
Really good idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I feel like we finally got to a point in American politics where progressive proposals are finally starting to become more mainstream and are starting to become widely talked about in everyday conversation. Yeah. And so to me, that's a sign of progress. And that progress that's a means to an end, which is eventually getting that stuff signed and, officially become law. But, you really think that a majority conservative Supreme Court is going to, play nice with our proposals and everything that we pass? I don't think so.
But this is the problem. The Supreme Court's supposed to be impartial and strictly to the law. But we all basically, everyone knows that a conservative judge is going to vote conservative every single time, regardless of what the Constitution says. And the fact that we know this and we accept it and we just kind of, obviously, that's a problem to me. So in an institution that's supposed to be impartial, everyone knows they're not. It's like It's weird.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. My opinion is I am personally against court packing. I think it sets dangerous precedents, and it gets into the point of, we get retaliations going on for who knows how long.
Oh yeah, I didn't say that. I'd be against it as well.
It was just like, happened with Jefferson and Andrew Jackson and all them in the early days of the United States. But I do think that we need to basically, how should I put this? To push for court packing, get the Republicans panicked about it, and then say, okay, we'll compromise for term limits.
Oh yeah, your negotiation strategies is another thing, but I think that's what we want.
I think
that's the primary strategy, because you make them sit there going, oh no, we're going to end up completely inundated with liberal justices for, who knows how long. And then you're like, all right, okay, it turns out, maybe that's not very popular, or, it might be difficult to get that through. I'm not sure about the constitutionality of that. Hey, why don't we just, put in term limits for justices, which, by the way, would have to be a constitutional amendment, because it is in the Constitution that they're lifetime appointments.
Yeah. It's weird how it's referenced though in the Constitution, because they basically say as long as they have good behavior, then they can continue on their tenureship.
Well, that has to do with the processes for removing justices. Which actually is incredibly difficult.
Mm-hmm.
You can remove a justice from the Supreme Court, but my God, is that fucking hard.
I get the logic. The Supreme Court is supposed to be above politics, so you give them lifetime appointments so they don't have to worry about elections. Once they're in, and it's very difficult to get rid of them, so they can just rule according to what they think is best, without worrying about politics. But in reality, of course, it's incredibly politicized. That's what I talked about earlier.
Remember, the Founding Fathers, they were very confident and pretty full of themselves. And for some reason, that arrogance that they had regarding their intelligence and their integrity meant that for some reason, they didn't think of the fact that, some other people might get in that don't have that kind of integrity. Because for some reason, it never seemed to cross their minds that we could get in partisan justices who just, they're just going to rule the way they want to rule. It doesn't matter what the Constitution actually says. They will find a way to twist it to make it work. They did put the checks in, but they made it so incredibly difficult to actually apply those checks on the Supreme Court, specifically because they didn't really think that would happen.
Mm-hmm.
And you can actually see, that they didn't even, back in that 1801 part that I brought up earlier, you could see that even back then they knew that this was a political game, because they packed the court before the Federalist Party got kicked out of office to keep hold of the court.
That was after the formation of political parties and after real political divides started to really surface. When they were actually running in elections against each other. Prior to that, they were basically all kind of working together and debating and negotiating. And it's a very different mindset when you're putting together something like the Constitution, and then you actually get to the point where you're actually following the Constitution. You're like, oh, this is how this works. Yeah. Sometimes you don't know how it's actually going to play out in real life until you're actually living it.
Exactly. I mean, it's also worth noting that in the year that the Constitution was written, life expectancy was 35.
Yeah. Well,
in America,
not really accurate, but people lived much longer than 35. Generally, if you survived out of childhood, you lived till your 70s, maybe 60s
maybe.
or 70s.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. If nothing killed you, you'd live until your 70s.
Primarily childhood disease,
right? But that's natural.
that created that low life expectancy.
The working poor probably didn't have that high.
And the working poor as well.
Yeah.
These are wealthy men who had access to, good food, all that.
Yeah.
But also you consider the Founding Fathers were more concerned about putting the executive branch under tight controls, checks and balances, than they were about Congress or about the Supreme Court, because there was in their mind that we need to stop a tyrant, like that king that we just rallied against, although it was really actually more against Parliament than specifically King George. But King George kind of became the figurehead for everything that was bad about England.
Yeah.
Sorry, Michael.
Yeah, no, I'm a Republican myself, so.
Yeah.
British Republican, that is.
Yeah.
But anyway.
But, so it was about they were more concerned with that. And that's why there's so many more checks on the executive branch than there are in the Supreme Court or on Congress.
Yeah.
And of course, since the start of the 20th century, Congress has started handing a lot of power over to the president that should belong to Congress. And that's part of the problem.
Yeah.
Congress isn't doing its job.
Getting back to the question earlier, though, quicker answer here, Jordan. Are you in favor of them packing the court? Yes or no? And very brief explanation, yes.
It's weird because I'm a maybe, but I guess after doing a lot of research, I do have to. I think
maybe to a yes.
Lean more in the no camp, honestly.
Maybe to no. Okay.
Yeah.
Michael.
No, I think preserving the institutions is more important than short-term gains, because of course you pack the court and you get liberal justice in for 10, 20 years, and then of course it comes up again, and
exactly.
Once you start degrading, something I learned when I was looking at Roman history is once you cross lines, they can't be uncrossed. So,
it's precedent.
Yeah, once the tribunes in Roman's time started vetoing things that they just didn't like, rather than your veto was supposed to be used for strictly the most urgent cases, almost never used to kill. Of course, one tribune decided, I don't like that proposal, I'm going to veto it. And of course, everyone started vetoing things they didn't like, and the whole system ground to a halt. Similar thing in this. If you start using the powers you've got for any old thing, then the whole system breaks. And there are some institutions which have to be held sacrosanct. And I think the only way of doing that, even when the Republicans aren't, is to do that yourself, to hold it sacrosanct and say, okay, it needs changes, but we still need to preserve the integrity of the court.
All right.
Yeah.
So, Tensai next, I guess.
Oh, yeah.
I am against court packing. However, I think we should push for it in order to get a constitutional amendment for, as a compromise, to put term limits on justices, on Supreme Court justices.
Fair enough. And personally, I actually advocate for it. Actually, I would say I'm in support of it. I would also, like to say that I am very much on the line with Tensai or Aubrey on this too, because I think what should happen is if the Democrats can take the presidency and get this the Congress in their favor, I think what needs to happen first is they need to pass some kind of legislation. And if it gets batted down by the Supreme Court at that point, that's when they agitate for packing the court. And the like Aubrey was saying, I think there should be a compromise position after that, where they say, okay, if you don't want us to pack the court, then we want Gorsuch to resign because that seat was stolen by the Republicans. And also we want to impose term limits. And so in that, we can stay at 9 justices, but we also get back that one seat that they unlawfully stole from him. And also we set those term limits that we've all, I think, are in support of. And so that's where I would put it. However, if none of that works, then you pack the court. That's the end game. You have to pack the court after that point, I think. If they are unwilling to pass the legislation that the Democratic establishment, maybe not the establishment, but the Democratic Party is trying to push, then something needs to change, because you can't have them just completely destroy whoever is next as the president going forward. Because, yeah, they could have the court for the next 8 years plus, and there's nothing that the Democrats are going to be able to do then at that point. They can just completely obstruct everything at that point.
The problem with that is that then when Republicans get back into power, they're going to immediately do the same.
Well, but what we said before we came on here, though, Aubrey, is that they've already essentially, the Republicans have already stacked the court to begin with. You know, they stole Gorsuch's seat. They stole that seat from the Democrats. And that was actually in a really nefarious, unlawful way. Whereas packing the court is actually a lawful way to go about this, though, you know? And so
the problem is I'm looking at it long term and what it's going to do to this country and to the Constitution.
Yeah.
Because one of the things that's really, especially with all this discussion lately of Trump claiming he's going to issue an executive order to overturn the 14th Amendment, I really got to thinking about the institutions involved in the Constitution. And the Supreme Court is where the Constitution lives and dies. Because if we no longer have a functional Supreme Court upholding the Constitution, whether that's in a conservative way or a progressive way, no matter what, if we no longer have that, we don't have a Constitution anymore.
It's what I was talking about when I said the whole system kind of breaks. If there are certain things you can, the government makes laws, okay? So it can never technically be bounded by laws, no matter what legal system you make. And Americans are actually surprisingly a strong one with checks and balances things. But no matter what system you make, it can always be subverted if you got enough shitty people. And when the people in government decide they're not going to hold things sacred anymore, they're always going to have power to subvert the system. Because you can't. As an example over here, sorry, I'm really drunk, so my explaining things is terrible today. As an example over here, they were talking about how the Brexit referendum is binding. They said, we are going to do this, and say Parliament's bound by this referendum. But, of course, if Parliament made a law saying they are bound by the referendum, Parliament could just repeal the law. You can't bound Parliament with laws because they made the laws. And they can just repeal any law they want, so you can't really do that.
Yeah.
In the same way, the American government can't be bound by the American government. So the only thing keeping that system together is that everyone agrees to keep it together. And so once you start abusing the systems, it's held together on like the honor system. It just falls apart if people start messing with it.
My argument still, though, is that looking at where we are right now, the Republicans are destroying this government on their own. And so, like, how is it useful for the Democrats to hamstring themselves and allow them to keep just ruling everything and obstructing at all costs and then stealing appointments to the Supreme Court, while the Democrats just sit back and are like, hey guys, can you please stop punching me in the face? Come on, let's actually talk about this, you know? And it is just like, they're just going to keep punching them in the face, and there's nothing that's going to change. And
frankly, that's not going to change in the next 20 years because the Democrats lack a spine.
Well, that's the thing. This is why I think it's a good idea for the Democrats to pack the courts, because that's actually a move of the Democrats actually having a spine, you know? Like, they actually have to gain a spine in this, and they're not going to if they keep on allowing the Republicans to be belligerent psychopaths that will destroy everything in this country while we try and be civil about these things, you know?
Except there's a few problems with packing the court. The first one is, well, you know, and I know, and anyone listening to us knows, that packing the court is not unconstitutional. Practically nobody else knows that. So they're going to see it as an unconstitutional move by Democrats. Yeah. And then Republicans go, see, I told you, they have no respect for the Constitution, and they will shout it from the rooftops.
Well, the Republicans are already actually saying that. I've actually read Fox News pieces and a few other right-wing pieces where they're already saying that you can just bet now that the Democrats are going to pack the court, and it's true. Well,
of course, and that's also the thing, though, because they will go out there and fearmonger about it. They're already out there fearmongering about it, so it's kind of like.
Well, I think the thing is,
damned if you do, damned if you don't. But at the same time, if you don't do it, that just basically, I mean, how many people stood at home clutching their guns for the past 8 years and going out and buying more every chance they got because Obama was going to come take their guns away? Yeah. You know, there's only so long that rhetoric actually works before people stop listening.
Yeah, ultimately, I think sooner or later, people are going to realize that the Republicans make all the claims of fear and racism that they want. Sooner or later, everyone's going to realize they're actually kind of shit at governing things. It's what happened with George W. Bush. By the end of his presidency, he was really unpopular because everyone realized he's shit. And the same thing's happened with Trump now. Everyone's kind of realizing this guy's actually just doesn't have a fucking clue what he's doing. And he's really unpopular. That's why you're getting this blue wave where Democrats who are 20 points behind are taking a competitive for seats. Ojeda, who's 50 points behind, is caught up, though he's an amazing candidate. So, ultimately,
going on here with JD and Steve King.
Yeah. Ultimately, I think
1 point in the polls.
The Republicans' electoral strategy will fall apart. It doesn't feel like it right now, but it will fall apart. We have to. When it does, we need to make sure there is a country left to salvage. And doing more damage to that won't actually help it by, destroying the Supreme Court effect.
Well, I think what needs to happen with the Supreme Court, I'm going to let you speak here in a second. But I just wanted to say that, with regards to packing the court, I think what needs to happen is the Democrats need to make the case for packing the court with the general population. And if they can successfully do so, that'll make actually doing the whole packing the court thing a lot easier and less destructive, So that's all I want to say.
When the Democrats get in, they pack the court to 13, let's say 13 members. The Republicans say, well, we're not getting anything passed because these liberal justices, right or wrong, are blocking everything. So we're going to bump it up to 15.
Right.
And then, of course, the Democrats, they pack the court with another 2 random justices, and they're going to be in for another 30 years now, so we're going to have to pack the court 17. And you effectively just don't have a Supreme Court anymore.
Yeah, it's a very aggressive proposal, and that's why Democrats have to consider the future ramifications of it. It may be very beneficial now, but they have to really consider, will it be beneficial for them 30 years from now? 40, 50?
Yeah.
So it's really at this point where it's about amending the systems and that we currently have. And so we tried for a long time this lifetime appointment, and we see what can happen when the country and politics are so hyper partisan, and how toxic and undemocratic that can become. And so we experimented with that, and now we realize where its limits are. So we have to figure out, which I think you all seem to think term limit seem to be a very effective, and maybe there's some downsides to it, but that I'm not considering at the moment. But I think, as far as I know,
there's obviously downsides, but
yeah,
I mean, you wouldn't. For example, if there were term limits, Ruth Bader Ginsburg would not still be on the court.
Right, but that doesn't
So I mean,
but
that also means you got other things on there. But I mean, well, first of all, Republicans have already proved in these past 2 years that they can't govern worth a damn. I mean, they are going out there blaming Democrats for not getting anything passed when they have a supermajority in the House and a majority in the Senate. Come on.
Yeah.
And secondly, there's actually nothing stopping the Republicans from packing the court right now. And what I mean by packing the court is not just stealing judicial nominees from previous administrations. I mean actually adding 2 more seats to the House or 2 more seats to the Senate. They could literally do that right now if they wanted.
To the Senate or the Supreme Court, you mean?
Sorry, in the Supreme Court, yeah. Sorry. I'll blame the rum.
Yeah, you only need a simple majority to put more justice on.
Yeah, you only need a simple majority. Yeah. And they have a supermajority in the House and a majority in the Senate, and they have a president. So it doesn't even need to override a veto. And then Trump could pass his silly little, or his horribly unconstitutional executive order abolishing the 14th Amendment. And then, when it's obviously challenged by the courts, then, oh, hey, look at that. We have a majority. Constitution's over with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you know what? I think, of course, so I think, the fairness in terms of balance within the Supreme Court is one thing. But I also think, just the ever-changing, attitudes of Americans is another. It's if there's 18-year it's 18-year tenure for justices, then at least that will guarantee that the ideology will at least update with the current state of things,
as well as technologies. Because if you think about it, we've got a few cases on net neutrality going forward. They're probably going to end up before the Supreme Court at some point, before people who didn't grow up with the internet and probably barely could manage to use their smartphones.
Right.
If they're anything like the majority of their age group.
Yeah.
But we want ruling on net neutrality? Liberal
exactly.
or no?
Yeah, that's such a great point. And also, a big reason why Republicans are so excited is because they can see they see there's an opportunity to overturn a lot of the progress that we've made, such as gay marriage and abortion rights and in pay, in wages, and so overturning that is very antiquated. And once again, that just shows this older way of thinking that is not representative of how Americans actually think. There is an overall majority of Americans believe in these things that have gotten passed, including even marijuana legalization, which we still haven't gotten around to, which we will in the future. But with a majority conservative Supreme Court, we're absolutely not passed.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it can happen that the Supreme Court can reverse its decisions, but usually that doesn't happen. I think the only reversal of a previous decision and ignoring the precedent that was set that I'm familiar with was when they reversed the Dred Scott decision, on whether or not a free man could be considered or could be re-enslaved or something. I don't remember the exact details of that.
Yeah, I can't think of it either.
A slave who had resided in a free state and territory where slavery was prohibited was not thereby entitled to his freedom. Oh, right. That was the one where he escaped to a free state. And then they ordered him to be returned.
All right.
To the South. That's right. It was later reversed. But that was still the precedent for, I think, up until the Civil War. Yeah. I believe that remained the precedent on the books. So, reversals of precedents do happen, but generally only when there's a major shift in either the politics or in the nation's view of that particular issue. So, it's kind of one of those things where was it Gorsuch that said that Roe v. Wade is settled case law in his hearing?
I don't remember.
No, it was Kavanaugh, wasn't it?
Yeah,
pretty sure Kavanaugh was against it.
Oh, it was Kavanaugh? Okay.
Yeah, a lot of people saying Kavanaugh's not going to get rid of abortion because he said that Roe v. Wade is settled law. The concern isn't that he'll repeal. In fact, I think it was you talking to me about this. The concern isn't that he'll repeal Roe v. Wade, but he won't challenge Republicans when they, when you've got one abortion clinic in Texas.
Oh, he's not going to rule on that regard. He won't rule against limitations for
Yeah, so when the Republicans have won abortion clinic in an entire state with ridiculous penalties and like waiting periods and things, and then the Democrats will come up and say, this is an undue restriction, Kavanaugh's going to say, no, it isn't, haha.
Yeah. But so that's kind of the thing, though. People are like, oh, Kavanaugh's going to overturn Roe v. Wade. People getting all excited about that because he's pro-birth. Well, he's not going to overturn Roe v. Wade itself. I think he and I think even Gorsuch as well, they both made it clear that you're going to need a constitutional amendment to overturn Roe v. Wade because it's settled case law. You can't go against precedent to that degree. And that's kind of, I feel like there's a lot of things that have been settled by Supreme Court decisions, such as gay marriage, such as abortion rights. But I feel like we also need to pass constitutional amendments on these things, just simply so that we've tied the Supreme Court's hands further in regards to if we write out explicitly, what is and isn't acceptable for abortion rights, what it can be limited to, that sort of thing, then the Supreme Court can't violate that. They have to rule in that favor. And, same thing with, LGBTQ rights. If you have a constitutional amendment, they can't overrule that because that's not the Supreme Court's job. They don't reinterpret something, especially when it's explicitly laid out. Now, they because of the loose wording of, freedom of speech and freedom of the press, they've been able to sort of work their way around it, by saying, oh, well, money equals speech and you have free speech, so obviously unlimited campaign contributions. They were to weasel their way around that because it wasn't explicitly laid out what free speech is in the amendment. Do you guys see what I'm saying?
Me.
Uh-huh.
Now, passing an amendment like that would be very fucking hard because, the majority of U.S. states are controlled by Republicans, although I kind of wonder for how much longer. I think we're more likely to see changes on the state levels than we are on the federal level, as far as a blue wave is concerned. Republicans know their shit, and their shit is gerrymandering.
You can't govern to save their lives, but they can cheat in an election.
I know, exactly. But so it's kind of like, I don't know. That's kind of what I'm getting at here. Is there is relying on the courts, but then there's, while the courts are the foundation of the Constitution and making sure the Constitution stays in place, we need to make sure that Congress is keeping up with the decisions that the Supreme Court makes to make sure that that it can't be changed later on down the line, or it can't be limited in some way through just weasel words.
Me.
But part of that is making sure that Congress actually does its fucking job.
Which isn't likely right now. But yeah, when it comes to the Supreme Court being packed, though, there's an interesting tidbit here from a Politico article that I'm going to add into here. On David Ferris's book and everything. It says Ferris's response to the normalcy program, sitting back and not packing the court and everything would be normalcy in this regard, is that there is no value in conserving a burning house. This is to say that our politics, our government right now is on fire. The thing is burning right now. There already are serious attacks on our institutions, and there's no value in conserving the burning house where it is right now in trying to preserve norms, is his argument as to why the Democrats need to take back the Congress and then pack the court.
I'd ask him what the point of setting more things on fire would be. Like, in theory, when the house is on fire, you want to come in as the fireman and say, right, we're going to put the fire out, we're going to start returning things to some sanity, we're going to re-implement checks and balances, because that's important in the government. Not, okay, you guys are set everything on fire, let's bring some gasoline.
But is this necessarily the same thing? You know, like, it may not necessarily be. Like I said, if we can sell this court packing to the American people and a majority agree with them packing it, because there are things that this conservative Supreme Court definitely can run to the ground, like let's say labor union legislation. They can completely destroy and gutter it. Even more, though. There's still some unions in the country, and they could destroy it completely.
You were talking, Badger, before about John Roberts being a swing vote, okay? So let's propose they try and do a constitutional amendment. John Roberts votes against it, and they say, okay, so in a month's time...
Constitutional amendment.
Yeah. So in a month's time, Trump says, okay, we're gonna add 2 more justices to the Supreme Court. Obviously, you'd be against that because it's insane. It's blatantly partisan. But it's also legal, and that's basically what you're saying, isn't it? It's legal, so it's fine.
Yeah, it's legal. He could do it.
Yeah.
And it would not break any laws. It wouldn't be a constitutional problem.
They may have even done it if Merrick Garland was seated, and then Trump and them took over the government at that point. They may have actually packed the court then, and they probably will try and repack the court and everything afterwards. But
one of the major hurdles to get over is selling it to Congress and getting Congress to vote for it. And re-elections are always coming up. And court packing has always been unpopular no matter who you fucking are. Whether you're a Republican or a Democrat. It's always been unpopular.
Yeah.
And, so getting that part aside, there's also the fact that Republicans need Democrats to cross the aisle and vote with them in order to get anything done, despite having a majority in the Senate and a supermajority in the House.
Because they're incompetent.
Because they're fucking incompetent. So you're not going to get... I highly doubt that they would be able to actually get it through. And all it would do is basically drive more Democrats to the polls in November, which is something the Republicans are terrified of. That's why they're out there screaming about a caravan that's 1,000 miles away and not going to get here for another month, assuming they even come this far. And, other stuff like that. And so it's one of those things where if you look at when court packing has occurred previously, it occurred previously at the very beginning of partisan politics. When you first had the political parties forming, stretching their wings, learning what they can and can't do, how much they have to get along with each other, how much they can fight, that sort of thing. They had actual fucking duels in the House, and I mean duels with pistols. Stuff like that was going on in Congress. And which is, by the way, why it's actually banned now. So you had all that going on at the beginning. And then you don't see any court packing until the Civil War, when we're in the middle of a highly partisan and an extremely, divided time in this country, when you can get away with a lot of things because, oh my God, it's a fucking emergency.
Mm-hmm. Are we not in a partisan time right now?
Hold on. Let me finish.
All right.
And then the following court packing and reduction was done after the war in an attempt to sort of get us back to some kind of equilibrium where both parties feel like they have at least enough control that they're not going to freak out too much and keep responding.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, we are in one of these places where court packing can occur. However, I think, and the last time it was attempted, it was during the Great Depression with FDR. And that was because he was frustrated and he just decided to try to go around the Supreme Court.
Yeah, well, they were...
Good idea. And the public received it very, very badly, despite him being super popular, so popular to the point where he won 4 elections in a row.
Yeah. At the time, they were striking down New Deal policies that it was trying to implement. That was why he wanted to pack the court, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
How do you think it would go over today, though?
I don't think it would go over very well, whether it comes from Republicans or Democrats. And I have a feeling that while some people might be really in favor of it, the vast majority would sit there and go, whoa, the house is already on fire. We don't need to throw gasoline on it.
Yeah.
You know? Because it's one thing if you're sitting there going, we're not sure whether or not we will exist as a country tomorrow. It's another thing where you're like, no, we're planning to still be a country tomorrow and we're planning to be in charge. You know, try to fix things and make things the way they should be in this country. You know, whether you think that's back to normal, like, you know, your moderate Democrats, or if you think, no, we need to just fix things and be better than we were, like progressives.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you don't do that by destabilizing the system, which is what packing the Supreme Court would do.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I feel like if the shoe was on the, I think when it comes to aggressive measures like this, I don't believe Democrats can get a majority of, or maybe they can get a slim majority, but not enough that Democrats to support them on this. But Republicans are very loyal to their base, and so are very loyal to their party. So I can imagine if she was on the other foot that Republicans would actually be pretty gun-ho about this.
The thing is,
yeah, the Republicans are authoritarian lapdogs. They will do whatever their leader tells them to.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know entirely about that. I think Trump's base, which is like a third of the Republican Party, will be definitely on board with this. But I don't know that the remaining 2/3 of the Republican Party would really be interested.
I've got to be honest, after Kavanaugh,
Yeah,
blatantly unqualified, blatantly partisan, has serious outstanding charges against him, and yet passed anyway. So I've given up on the idea of moderate Republicans.
I'm not saying they're moderate. I'm saying non-Trumpian. Because there are definitely 2/3 of the Republican Party are not Trump supporters.
Meh.
They just fell in line.
That's what I mean, though. They've just fallen in line.
Mm-hmm.
So, I don't... Well, see, and there's also the fact that the majority of people in elected office in both the Republican Party and the Democratic Party are... they are very in favor of their donors. And who are their donors? Corporations, the wealthy. And what gets through barely impeded in the Supreme Court? Any legislation that might negatively impact the corporations in any way, shape, or form.
Mm-hmm.
So they don't really want that to change. So it doesn't necessarily matter whether or not the Republican Party is against packing the court so much as it does if the donors are against packing the court.
Mm-hmm.
And mind you, these are donors that donate to both the Republicans and the Democrats. They like the status quo. Yeah, they're more than happy to take any of the freebies that Trump gives them. They like that. But, you know, anything that might change the system too much or destabilize it, let's hold off there. Rhetoric's fine. You can go saying what you want, but don't actually change it systemically. You see what I mean?
Yeah, certainly. Oh,
sorry, I was actually zoned out on something. Sorry.
Of course you were.
I was trying to find something in Politico.
So naturally you zoned out.
Yeah, that's totally what it is.
The woman speaking.
Yeah.
No,
I was trying to find something. Sorry.
Maybe it was payback for the Alex Jones episode, because I admit that for the majority of that, I just totally tuned you out.
That's fine.
Yeah,
Well, yeah.
I think we've reached a consensus in terms of a strategy for the Democratic Party, how they should handle this in the upcoming years.
I don't know.
Yeah, well, they're not going to follow through with it. Democrats, I mean, what was it? Someone said that, they're like, it had to do with the MAGA bomber. They were talking about the conspiracy theories that Democrats were sending these bombs to themselves. They're like, wait. You're talking about the Democrats whose plans always blow up in their faces, sending bombs to their own people, which weren't supposed to go off, and the bomb didn't actually go off in their faces?
I mean, not to mention this nonsense anyway, because the bombs were described as crude but viable.
Yeah, I know. But yeah, so I mean, it was just kind of like, really? the least competent political party.
Meh.
Well, maybe not the least, but pretty damn close.
The Democrats definitely need to grow a spine.
I don't know,
and they need to actually be a little bit stronger.
Pretty damn incompetent, but
yeah.
Green is...
They're kind of incompetent, let's be honest. But yeah.
Yeah, actually, they're doing pretty good in California right now. They've apparently got some really good candidates that have chances of winning seats.
Yeah, at the local level, they can do okay. It's just, when they try and go to the federal level, they just don't have any chance, unfortunately.
Well, and part of it is because they haven't built up the infrastructure for a federal
party.
Who's that, sorry?
The Green Party.
Oh, right.
They've got their crazies, and then they've got their reasonables.
I was going to say, the Democrats are doing really well right now. Partly because of Bernie Sanders, because...
Yeah.
Weird guys, you guys are not going to believe this, but it says that left-wing policies are actually really popular.
Weird.
Really? I never would have guessed.
And folks like Cortez and Jetta and Andrew Gillum and people, and Beto O'Rourke, these are all Bernicrats who are running on progressive platforms, and they're really popular.
Beto isn't so much progressive as he is...
he's more progressive
left-wing.
Democrats,
He's left-wing. He's definitely left-wing, but I'm not sure progressive is the correct description.
More so than standard Democrat.
Yes. Mm-hmm. He's further left than the standard Democrat. Yeah, so.
And he's maybe going to be...
We will see.
Yeah. Oh, man.
Definitely see what happens.
Yeah, I'm cautiously hopeful that we will dethrone Steve King. It's all going to come down to turnout. 100% turnout.
Jordan, what were you about to say?
No, I'm just going to say, by the time we reconvene for our next podcast, all of this anticipation over... all of the anticipation for 2 years. We anticipated this for 2 years. It's finally here, and we'll finally get a verdict on what people really want.
Yeah. It seems very possible that the Democrats will take the House, but it's very unlikely that they'll take the Senate. But I don't think so. We'll see. We'll see what happens.
Actually, what's her name? Claire McCaskill in Missouri. It's looking like she's going to lose. She's actually going full Republican, trying to convince people to vote for her, and at the same time, completely turning off every Democrat in the state because they're like, you're going on talking about how you vote with Trump 50% of the time as though that's a bragging right, and that you voted for 70% of his nominees for, judgeships. Why should we vote for you?
Yeah, it's a bad strategy.
We have Robert Menendez up for vote here. He's a Democrat from New Jersey. He has some corruption scandals and all that, and I'm not sure if he's going to get in. Well, yeah, he is from New Jersey, and he is in government. So, of course, there's going to be some kind of scandal. But,
New Jersey.
We're not sure if he's going to get reelected. Might be, but we'll see.
Yeah.
But I guess with regards to packing the court, it seems a little bit mixed here. I'm in favor of them packing the courts if and only if the Supreme Court does actually strikes down some of the potential progressive policies that maybe our next president and Supreme or Congress pushes through. And you guys are definitely not in favor of packing the Supreme Court at all, right?
No.
So.
Yeah, no.
I am in favor of threatening to pack the Supreme Court and settling on a constitutional amendment adding in term limits.
Yeah, I would actually, I prefer that outcome, really. But if they cannot have that outcome, I do think that they should pack the Supreme Court at that point. And they really do need a majority of Americans to support them doing it. So that's why I think the Supreme Court inevitably will have to strike down something big before that happens. So
yeah, the thing is, the Supreme Court, if they strike down something like Medicare for All, that strikes down Medicare. Because Medicare for All is literally just an extension of the Medicare program. The Supreme Court would be fucking reviled if that happened. You'd have Republicans and Democrats coming out against them if they strike down Medicare.
Yeah.
So
that's true.
Yeah.
We'll have to see what happens though in the future. Obviously,
which I'm pretty sure there have been Supreme Court challenges to Medicare, and it has been upheld as constitutional in the past because Republicans have been trying to get rid of Medicare and Social Security since they started.
Yeah, though it's always been over a 5-4 split, with I think Kennedy being the split vote that.
No, that's prior to this current court.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I know there were some things during the Affordable Care Act that were struck down, but some things were upheld through 5-4 and everything. So
yeah, no, that had nothing to do with Social Security and Medicare.
Well,
or
I was
Medicaid,
just talking about healthcare in general, I guess. But
okay. Yeah, no. Specifically, we'll see. Medicare for All is literally nothing more than an expansion of Medicare. So any ruling against Medicare for All is also a ruling against Medicare, and that's why any justice that rules on a challenge like that has to tiptoe.
Well, no matter what happens, we will have to see what happens in the future here. I guess we can wrap it up here, guys. It's been a little bit over an hour. And we can't go too far. We can't go over an hour and a half. I don't know if you guys have any last words you wanted to add here before we do the wrap up here. Jordan, did you have anything? Just going down in order.
Yeah. Just don't forget to vote.
Oh yeah.
Make sure you vote.
Yeah.
Vote.
Even when our governmental institutions are falling apart, our goal is to restore some kind of sanity to them, not just make them worse.
Yes.
Yeah.
Perhaps.
Yep. And I just say, get out there and vote, and just keep on it and pay attention to the companies that donate to candidates that you absolutely cannot stand. I recently found out that there's a lot of companies that have donated to Steve King in the past, and it's probably going to change some of my future shopping habits.
Ooh. You share to drop a name? I mean, yeah. Would you like to drop a name?
Yeah, definitely.
Casey's General Store, which is a gas station.
Oh, local things?
Founded in Iowa.
Who cares?
Yeah. Land O'Lakes.
I heard about Land O'Lakes.
Kohl's.
Damn.
Fairway,
Cool.
which is also a grocery store. I'm not sure how far they're spread. And those are some of them that I know of. Oh, and Pizza Ranch. I
thought I heard that some of his money sources actually dried up recently, though.
Oh yeah,
I don't remember.
They have. He was broke going into election week. The week before elections specifically. Actually, Land O'Lakes reversed course on that. They've pulled their donations from him after it came out that they're a donor to him.
Well, they better.
Yeah.
I will say they have some delicious cheese. I'll just say that. But yeah.
I always thought their milk tasted chalky. A&E is much better. Anderson Erickson.
I've never had their milk. I just know their cheese isn't bad. So
yeah,
that's all I know.
But yeah, Pizza Ranch. That was a betrayal that cut me deep.
Well, I guess the consensus for you guys out there is definitely go out to vote if you're in the States. If you're in the United States, definitely vote. Your vote is important. Vote for who you want. I'm not going to tell you who you should vote for, but, definitely get out to vote. But thank you, everyone that shows up for this podcast and listens to us rant and rave. There are going to be changes in the future here. Like I said, we're going to once a month, and we're going to do a lot more research. We're going to try and do these topics a little bit better. This was our maiden voyage with our new format. So our next show will probably be the first weekend of next month in December. But we have a Patreon. If you want to help the show, you can help donate to the show that way. We don't have any bonus content up there right now or anything. maybe in the future we can look into doing that. I know Aubrey was actually just saying that maybe we can do some extra little bits for YouTube earlier. That'd be kind of interesting to maybe make some extra content on the side there. You can always get in touch with us through our Discord channel. We have a Discord up, a public Discord. There's always a link in the description of this, and we are often in there, and you can get in touch with us. We can have conversations. I post a lot of news in there every week. You can email us. We have a Facebook page. Like I said, we are on YouTube. We are on iTunes. What else is there, guys? Is there anything else that I'm missing here? Oh, our Twitters. Our Twitters are going to be in the description as well. My Twitter is at the Chris of Robin, and Aubrey, I know yours is up there. I don't even want to imagine trying to say it, but
at Reynacita.
Yeah, but it will be in the description. Michael's is on there as well. Jordan doesn't have one because he's sad and lazy and not winning.
Wait, don't you?
Jordan.
Oh, I thought
Jordan's not on
else.
Twitter. It's terrible.
You know what? No, Tinsai, you're right. I am on there, but I'm just not very active.
Oh, okay.
Well, you got to get active, man. Come on.
I thought I'd seen you tweet things before.
I don't even have you friended on there, Jordan. What or followed on there? What the heck? Follow me on there, Jordan, so I can follow you back. Come on. What are you doing?
I don't have one.
What the heck? This is some crap. Jordan's a liar. Sad. But anyway, guys, thank you so much for being here again. Next month, we are going to be tackling, what was it? Depression in the era of Trump. And I guess, Michael, if you want to help us out with the Brexit side of things, we can also potentially cover depression in the era of Brexit as well.
Yeah, I actually ended up on the show today because I saw them in the chat and I was like, oh, I'm really drunk. I'll go and talk to those guys. But yeah, I might do that because...
could even, maybe if it's too big to do both of those, we could even split them up. I don't know.
No, we could probably do both, but yeah.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens. But let's get out of here. You guys have a great month, and we will be back in December.